Okay, everybody, and hello to today's CX Quick Tips, which is actually brought to you by CX Global Media. And I have with us Mike Wittenstein, who's
Hey,
going to.
Jim.
Yes, Mike, great to see you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Aren't you glad that we have that last one behind us? Oh my God.
You know, for me, it's like one of those sayings when they say hindsight is 2020. Man, I'm glad that thing's behind me. Woo! But
Very good. Well, we're talking from Georgia today, so there's a lot going on here with the runoff election that's supposed to determine the future of the world for the next 100 years. So we'll
uh,
see how that goes.
I mean, it's needless to say, I think this is a carryover of 2020 that needs to be behind us.
I
Um,
agree. Yeah, the next session will be on voter experience. How about that?
There you go. We're actually going to be talking about prototyping customer experiences with stories. And Mike is one of those master storytellers, story developers, story enhancers, story accelerators. And I'm so excited he's with us today. And I don't want to take a whole lot of time from him because we only have 8 minutes left, Mike, because we're actually going to be sharing those prototyping of customer experiences with stories in less than 10 minutes. And we've already used some preparing and setting the stage. So go ahead, Mike.
All right, well, let's just cut right to it. Here are the three things that you can do when you prototype experiences with stories. Here's the deal. When you share a customer experience, you go through all these journey mapping exercises, and then you turn them into some nice little storyboards. And then if you start to talk about them, people go, oh my gosh, now I see what your idea is all about. And it doesn't cost anything to work with paper and pencil and a sketch artist. You have an idea, you sketch it out, you do your Post-it notes, then you draw it into a storyboard, and then you get a little stick. If you don't have a stick, you can use a pen. And you go from point to point to point, and you start talking about what happens to a customer as they go through that experience, or what happens to the employee who's serving that person during that experience. And you go step by step. And then you look at the other people's reactions, because you're doing this as a performance. The audience is saying, well, I have a question about this. I think we could do that, blah, blah, blah. You iterate, just like you're doing software, but it happens in minutes and hours instead of weeks and months and quarters. So you can get to a version 2 of your experience super, super quickly. The second thing that you can do is that when you use a story, you're leading people to understand what's in it for them. Stories supply this magic elixir of, oh, so what's in it for me? How is it going to affect me? What's my job going to be like? What's the balance of power in my department is going to be like? As you're telling stories, you're able to fill in that narrative just like an author does. And don't worry if you're not an author. It comes very, very naturally as soon as you start talking about what's on the screen. Those are really the key points to the whole thing. I have an example if you'd like to see.
Oh, please do, because I think for us that kind of makes this, the theory element into the reality.
All right, so let's have a little workshop real quick. Let's say I work for, and this is set up, okay, so we're just gonna fake our way through this, but just to give people a feel. Let's say you have an idea for on-screen help for your new Amazon Kindle. They're coming out with a tablet, it's dedicated, it does reading and shopping and all that kind of stuff, but you wanna make it so better that you can put a little avatar up there. So you might do a report that talks about the value of intelligent two-way communication in home shopping on tablet computers. And you might have some graphs about adoption of tablets and all this stuff, and it gets kind of boring, boring, boring. And then you talk about, well, how you're going to staff that position. And you just go into all the detail. Or you could do this.
Thank you for pressing the Mayday button. How can I help you?
Whoa, who are you?
I'm Amy, a tech advisor for your new Kindle Fire.
I didn't realize I'd get a live person.
Yep, we're here 24/7. We can draw on your screen and even show you how to use different features.
So I can just press the Mayday button and you're here to help?
Hit Mayday and I'm coming to the rescue.
Amy, I like you.
Aw.
Isn't that cute? Doesn't that tell you everything that you need to know? It works at home, it's comfortable, it's easy, you can walk around, it's only this big on the screen, it's confident, it's friendly, all that stuff that you can't get across in a PowerPoint presentation, you can get across in a story. Apple did the same thing. They used video when they did the gray flannel navigator, which was the precursor to the Newton and then the iPhone. It talked about the backstory of the people, how they got to where they are, what they're going to do next. And you could tell what was valuable to the guy in the Kindle ad just now. It was evident, it was on his face and in his environment, and even responded with, "I think I like you." So stories can share a lot of information that charts and graphs, numbers, and even customer journey maps can't.
Well, and even when I'm thinking about this, Mike, I'm starting to think about how we translate that into the actual interaction itself. So, the Amy example is great. We also have ones where we don't have the face-to-face, and we can get into that. That's a whole nother session. But how does somebody who is interacting with the customer be able to take all that what we're talking about here and make it very relatable within the interaction?
Well, there are a couple of things that we do at Story Miners. One of them is, as we're going through this process of iterating what the very best story is, we're filming that. So by the time we're done, we have something to show to the people on the front lines. And when we set them up for success, we say, all right, what about this resonates with you? Where do you think it needs work? Oh, there? Could you help us, please? And then they start to complete the story. So the trick is only do 90% of the story. Let your front line do the final adjustment so that they take the ownership of it and they bring it to the customer. It's the same thing that you would do in theater. The director and the writers don't tell you every little nuance. You have to figure some of that stuff out for yourself. And that's what delights the audience.
Okay, so when I'm thinking about that, I also think about a lot of times where people may start critiquing what you're doing instead of trying to come up with additives, or a lot of people talk about the improv. It's, this and yes, and also, instead of actually, taking it to the next level. So we don't want critique. We want development and ideas. How do you keep people from falling into the wrong camp?
Well, there are three ways that you can do that. You can invite the right people. You can use a collaborative discussion, sometimes that's called a Buberian dialogue. A guy named Michael Lisick is popularizing that out of South Florida. And you can also use electric shock. So if you just wire their chairs, they'll kind of get that Pavlov message that behavior is not helpful. This is not tear down time. That's not how you build value. It's build up and coordinate time. The Buberian dialogue is really interesting because you put two people talking about an idea. They each get to talk for a certain amount of time. They talk it out. The audience who's watching them, and it takes an audience, then shares what did they find in common. What they found in common between the two ideas is what the two conversers write down on a board. Then they talk about what is in common between their ideas. And it kind of moves things into the middle. And that's important because in design thinking, the trick is to come up with a design that gives everybody more of what they want. It's not a win-lose. It's not like negotiations or poker or Monopoly, where one person wins and everyone else is devastated. Good customer experience is about customers, employees, shareholders. The whole ecosystem has to rise. And that's why moving the conversations to the middle and avoiding the negativity up front is important.
Yeah, I think what you said to me and what I interpret is that this isn't about trying to say who's right and who's wrong.
It's about how do we deliver the most value for clients first, and then let the bean counters and the engineers, and I'm not saying this in a disparaging way, those folks have amazing abilities to see how something is done and make it better. But that same skill does not make things better in the first place, nor does it do it on the soft side, because every customer experience has a heart side to it. So just stage the value creation for customers first and the value taking, the profit optimization second. That'll always lead you closer and closer to what your customers want, and you'll have a more valuable brand that people talk about for a long time. It's the birthplace of word of mouth.
Mike Wittenstein, as usual, awesome insight and information. Mike, how do folks get in touch with you?
Well, I thought all you were going to say is that all they could hear was the electric shock part. Here's my contact information. Everything people need is at storyminers.com. My phone and my email address are right there, mike@storyminers.com. We're very responsive.
And you can also find Mike as a regular contributor on CX Global Media. Mike, thanks for sharing your knowledge and wisdom, and we wish you the very best.
Have a great year.